Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin, at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host here on Trench Talk. He is Jordan Watkins at Big 75 Fella. Jordan, tough game, tough post game on Sunday. How you doing with a little bit of time? Has it helped or hurt your feelings, your mindset with more time since that debacle on Sunday?
Oh man. I mean, not as mad, but there are some things that have come out that, again, I know we talked a lot yesterday of things starting at the top, and just seeing the coaching job that Kevin O'Connell did. Just some of the, like I said, some of the details that were coming out about what was going on the sideline and this communication he was having with Josh Dobbs. Oh my goodness, that didn't help. And for the record, this is not a Vikings. I know it's purple. This is Morris Brown. HBCU in Atlanta, so let's not go crazy there either. But yeah, this is just shocking still about how this all transpired.
Yeah, one of the most bizarre games, and honestly, like if I was watching it as a neutral fan, it would have been a very entertaining game. So I don't want to take that away. And I honestly love Josh Dobbs, so it's really nothing against him. It's painful for me, but this is one of those games now that the Falcons are going to have forever following them. The Josh Dobbs coming off the street with no practice and whooping you game. Just another highlight reel that we're on the other end of, but we're used to that, so it's not as painful as it could be for some fan bases probably. But yeah, guys, we're going to get into it some more. We've got more takes for you, more time to think, more time to simmer on some of these issues that the Falcons showed in that Week 9 loss to the Vikings, and sort of talk about where we go from here. Obviously, we'll talk about the trenches too, but probably more of a meta show because we did do a 2-hour post-game show covering a lot of the details on Sunday. So we'll get into it. We'll get into all of it. Before we take off, want to bring you guys a quick word from our sponsor, betonline.ag. Folks, the last of the major pro sports leagues is off and rolling, and college basketball is ready to go as well. BetOnline.ag remains your top spot for all your live betting action and contests. You can get the NFL, college football, UFC, and NBA in full swing, and BetOnline is your number one source for all your wagering news, odds, trends, and prediction. You can get all that hoops betting action along with the NFL and college football all the way through the Super Bowl and college football playoff at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time. So what are you waiting for, guys? Head to the BetOnline website today and remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Jordan. Well, there's a lot we could get to. I mean, I think to me, the theme of the episode is just inability to finish on both sides. And it's sad that we're talking about inability to finish because actually the defense did finish a lot. They got 4 sacks, which is I think their third highest total of the season, or ties their second highest total of the season. They were getting sacks at a very high rate in this game, but it was the story of like the ones they didn't get. That was the difference in the game because they should have had 2, 3, 4 more sacks where the quarterback's in the grasp and it doesn't come to fruition. And then on the offensive side, the defense does its part. It gets 2 turnovers in prime scoring position. It gets a safety. And what does the offense do? 3 field goals. So we're just 2 field goals, I think. Not even 3 field goals off of that, when that should be at least 1 touchdown. And that would have been the difference in the game too. So it's really an inability to finish on both sides. And it's not like this is the first time it's happened. This was just the most obvious sort of game where they both kind of came to a head at once. So where do you want to go first, the defense or the offense in this one?
Man, I mean, I guess we can start with the defense. And the reason why I say that is because, look, it's like I think you hit the nail on the head talking about being able to finish. Because yes, you did get the 4 sacks. But again, we're sitting here and we talked about the blatant situations where you could have and should have had more. I think that people look at Minnesota's rushing yard total from this game and be like, man, they ran all over them, which is a little misleading because 66 of those yards came from Josh Dobbs scrambling. So when you look at it, and again, you think about, well, why was he scrambling? Because you missed on some easy opportunities to get some sacks. I mean, we've seen even out just the trenches, we've seen plenty of examples throughout the weeks of free blitzers coming off the edge. This week I think it was D. Alford, and not being able to finish that play. But Dupree, that final drive, he had a great pass rush move, little hezzy, I don't believe Quessenberry, and dipped the shoulder, got around the edge. You have a chance to get Dobbs down before he makes that big scramble. Doesn't happen. Obviously there were a couple of missed tackles. Again, missed tackles popped up on tape a lot yesterday. I think the most that I've seen in any game so far this year. So again, talking about finishing and ending plays. So it's one of those things where, again, this is the standard that the defense has set for themselves. Good isn't good enough, right? So obviously in the situations where they needed to be better, they weren't. So that takes away from what could have been a much better performance.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't, again, it's like the defense we know has earned the benefit of the doubt, and I think this was by far their worst game. But like, even so, it shouldn't have been this bad because, the offense, again, screws over the defense in this one, turning the ball over on consecutive plays. When that should have been the opportunity for the Falcons to basically take control of that game and put it away. Instead, they give the Vikings 11 points on back-to-back plays, essentially, on offense. When the offense should be finishing, right, they're actually putting their opponent back in the game. And that's the story. But at the end of the game, the defense still has an opportunity to win this game. And like we said, they don't do it. So it's sad to see. And this defense is just so frustrating because you look at them down to down and they're playing great football. It's like, oh, wow, they're shutting down the run. They're getting pressure on the quarterback. We saw so many terrific pass breakups in this one. Jeff Okudah had a great game. We saw Jesse Bates have a great game. Like, the coverage is tight. It's great. And then it'll be missed sacks, huge scrambles, and coverage busts. And that's the only time Minnesota moved the ball in the entire game. So it's like if you just picked like 85% of the plays out of a hat, you'd be like, oh, wow, the Falcons defense shut the Vikings down. But guess what? The other 15% count just as much. And those were the ones where the defense did not finish. They came up short, and that was the difference in the game.
Absolutely. I mean, again, you look at Minnesota scoring drives, and this is what is frustrating. If you look at some of Minnesota scoring drives compared to ours, right? Like, for example, we start off the game, 5 plays, 34 yards. That's when we got a 52-yard field goal. Great. And then they go 9 plays for 74 yards. They get that field goal. That's when Jaron Hall obviously got hit out of the game. Hope he's doing okay. And then, Josh Dobbs had 2-minute drives on us. Or actually one was a 4, because they had a 13-play drive for 75 yards. That's when they got the touchdown right before halftime. Let's see what else was in here. 6 plays for 40 yards. I was out of a turnover. And then again, the final one, 11 plays, 75 yards, which again, as we talked about, a big part of why you got those 75 yards because you didn't finish plays when you had the opportunity to get the quarterback down. So that's what's unfortunate. But I again, going back to the micro with the trenches again, loved shout out Kentavious Street. I mean, I tell you what, we're talking about Josh Dobbs just coming in and doing what he's got to do. I want to shout out Kentavious Street as well. He didn't make every single tackle that he had an opportunity to make, but I was very pleased just to see his ability to penetrate. I mean, we always talk about setting edges and cutback lanes from a outside defensive end standpoint. He was doing that as like a 1-tech or a 3 in certain plays. So, you can cut off half the line of scrimmage from right over the ball. That's something that's really impressive to do. Also, like I said, I don't care what they say on the stat sheet. You got an interception. That's not a forced fumble. I'm not having it. That's an interception. You don't take away my big man picks. I don't allow that.
Yeah.
And he's wearing 75, so that just counts for double.
It's perfect. It's like he knew you were gonna comment on the show.
That's what it is. I had to. Anyamata doing what he usually does. I think he had like 10 tackles in total. Calais had the big safety. Saw him doing his run defense per usual. I actually saw him. I felt like I saw him drop more a good bit. And sometimes even they had a detached tight end, he would go out to try to jam him and then, go into something else there, which was interesting. Again, not the biggest fan of it, but, it is what it is. So yeah, again,
Yeah.
biggest thing for me is just I just wish we could have finished on some plays a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, and it was unfortunate that Alford basically had his worst game of the season too, and then he gets
Yeah.
hurt. Mike Hughes has to come in, ends up giving up, a pivotal play as well. Um, it. I definitely want to give a shout out to Kentavious Street as well. I mean, I don't think anyone was expecting him to play as many snaps as he did. He came in and played 47 snaps, which I think is out of 75 potential snaps. So, I mean, he came in and basically started. So, like, props to him. He handled it well. PFF has always hated Street. I've seen that throughout his career. Like, he had 2.5 sacks last year, and they gave him like a 30 pass rush grade. And it's like, he didn't play that many snaps, and he has 2.5 sacks. He can't be doing everything wrong. But they hated his game. They gave him like a 59, which, okay, whatever. We have our issues with PFF. But it was nice to see Nate Landman again have a great game. He's not getting benched. He's not coming off the field ever again. Nate Landman is a starter. I think that much is obvious at this point. And then David Onyemata obviously has a great game, pretty much automatic. It's so nice to have him here as well. Jesse Bates, I would say this was one of Bates' weaker games, but like he still had a great game, honestly. Like and some of these things like these coverages and things like that, like I know we were debating like whether Richie Grant or Jeff Okudah was responsible for that one busted coverage and things like that. It can be really hard to say. So it does put like PFF and graders like PFF in a bad spot where they're like, they have to kind of guess because they have to assign a value to every play. That's like their ethos. They assign a positive or negative value to every play. So like, I don't want to get on him too much for that, but Arnold Ebiketie, I thought, had a strong game, even though he only had like 20 snaps. Taquan Graham, he's really had to step up in Grady Jarrett's absence, and I think he did also have a good day today, so it's nice to see him maybe starting to get a little bit healthier coming off that injury, which I think people forget. Like, that was not a nothing injury. That was a serious injury. Right. It was gonna take him some time to get back to full strength. It sucks for these guys. I hate that it had to end like that in like just the most embarrassing Falcons fashion, because I really think this defense is different, and I still do. And again, it's like they've earned our respect and the benefit of the doubt, where we can see a couple down games from them and not say like, oh, this thing is clearly a farce and clearly it's all falling apart. In my opinion, I'm not willing to forget the first 7 games where this defense was lights out because of a couple down games here.
No, I would 100% agree with that. Yeah, I agree. It's just, I think that, and this is what we've talked about the offense plenty of times, is that, even in the good games that they've had, there have been certain things that pop up. And so it's not a surprise that that's some of what gets them beat if they do have a bad game, right? We talk about a coverage bust. And again, for me, it looked like on that play was cover 2. And obviously if you're in cover 2, you're cornering, you gotta get hands on that receiver, try to force him inside, and then that's when the safety can come over the top. Jeff didn't put hands on him up front, and then there's the whole thing with Richie Grant. So again, not really sure. I can't confirm that was cover 2, right, but that's what it felt like. But that's something that's shown up on tape before. You think back to the double move touchdown that DeAndre Hopkins had against when we played against Tennessee. Same scenario. Looks like cover 2. You don't get hands on DeAndre at the line. And then, of course, Richie, he bites on it. So it was like, even though it wasn't AJ's fault the play happened, it's just something that was on tape before. Yeah. And it happens again. And obviously, we've talked about pressures versus sacks. And again, I to an extent, pressures can be misleading for me. Like, don't get me wrong. I'd rather have pressures than not.
Right.
But then it becomes a question of, what are the pressures getting you?
Yeah.
Are you getting sacks off of them? Are you getting missed throws? Turnovers, whether it's fumbles or interceptions. If you're not, then, to an extent, because you can have a pressure and then Josh Dobbs scrambles for 30-something yards. So at that point, it's like, okay, well, you got the pressure, but you didn't get home. And
it would be better if you didn't get the pressure at that point.
It almost feels that way. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like, also at the same time, it was, like even at the end of that game, I know people want to get on Mike Hughes. It's not really a Mike Hughes problem. It's the fact that you couldn't get to the quarterback, and Josh Dobbs had so much time to find an open receiver, who, is a former Falcons practice squad legend, Brandon Powell. So again, just to rub it in even more of all the fun little parallels that happen in this game, right? But yes, like I said, it's just after a while, even when good things happen, and I'm sure this is something that defense and that locker room feels too. Is like even when they had the good games, the good performances, they're always looking to get better. But here's a situation where some of the things that we've been talking about and have shown up on tape, they come back to bite you.
Yeah, exactly, and it's exactly what happened this week. And I think this defense really does prepare super well. So I think they've been at a disadvantage the last couple of weeks because they really can't prepare for Will Levis, who we've never seen before. Yeah. I mean, you can to an extent, and I think they probably could have done a better job thinking like, oh, this guy with the cannon arm is going to throw deep. That probably should have been a little more obvious. But Josh Dobbs, it's like, oh, we didn't even know he was going to be in the facility until Wednesday when they probably already done all their meetings and sort of planning, and now we're sort of translating it to the field. And then it's like, oh, we're preparing for Jaren Hall. Okay, now Josh Dobbs has entered the game, and he's been here for 3 days. So what do you even prepare for? You talk about Kevin O'Connell. He's like, they're drawing up plays in the dirt on the sideline, which props to those guys.
He was learning the cadences over on the sideline. He had to learn the cadences on the sideline.
Yeah.
But and that's the thing. Is people always say sometimes being that's why everyone loves the backup. You don't plan for the backup. So again, when everyone's going crazy, like we said about Taylor Heineke and what he did last week in that second half, so because that defense was not preparing for Taylor Heineke all week. They're preparing for Desmond Ridder and what Desmond Ridder likes to do and wants to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's just how it goes.
Yeah, it'd be like that. So you have to be ready, but and it's not going to get probably any easier this week because they're probably playing Kyler Murray in his first game back too. So we'll see if the same thing happens. I hope they can get it together, obviously, but again, we're in a situation now where we're not talking about going into the bye with a winning record. We're talking about trying to go into the bye without a losing record. So that's just fantastic. But let's transition over to the offensive side, which I think is deserving of a lot more criticism.
Oh man.
And to me, it comes down to expectations, Jordan. I think you feel the same way. We've talked about it. We weren't expecting the defense to be good. We were hoping the defense might be average. They've got all these pieces. Maybe they sort of gel and we become instead of 28th, we become 16th. They've clearly surpassed that. And that's part of why I'm just not going to rag on the defense for giving up a couple of bad games, because it's this is still infinitely better than we were expecting. We were expecting these sorts of games every single week, and that would still probably be an improvement over what they were last year. So I'm willing to give them a little bit more pass because of the expectations, which was that they might take time to get settled. We're not expecting them to be good right away. And they surpassed that. So we give props to the coaching staff and the players for beating expectations. The offense is the opposite. It's, okay, we've got all these pieces. We've got this young quarterback that we allegedly trust, and we've got these 3 stars, and we're going to feed these guys. And this is finally the final form of Arthur Smith's offense. We're going to see this take off now that we've got everything we need. And it has regressed bad. It has regressed bad from what it was last year. The run game is extremely inconsistent. They're not utilizing Kyle Pitts at all. Even with Drake London out of the lineup, he got 4 targets. Bijan Robinson is RB2 essentially, where he's kind of a bit player. And so is Kyle Pitts. And again, it's if these were just random players on your team, it's okay, well, you're trying to divvy this up. But it's you went out and got these guys with premium picks, and you don't even feature them. You don't even sort of try to feature them. They're not even on the field as much as a lot of star players would be, much less targeted. So we've got this very bizarre concoction, and now we've had a quarterback change, and they did score more points. This was their highest scoring output of the season, 28 points. But they also continue to turn the ball over and screw over the defense. And again, in the crunch time, in the important situations when they need to get it done, they're not finishing. And whether that's the run blocking, whether that's in the red zone, they're just not getting it done. And they're continuously asking the defense to bail them out. And the defense is starting to not be able to do that. That's why we have a 4-5 record, is because the defense is we can't just bail you out every single game, which is exactly what they asked them to do once again this week. So,
yeah, it's frustrating. And I mean, look, it's situational. Certain situations can make you either a good team or a bad team, right? That it's really that fine of a line in the NFL. So, for example, sudden change, right? We always talk about sudden change, whether it's right after a turnover. If you're on defense, you got to hold them to 3 points or nothing, right? So obviously in this game, I think there was one time where after one turnover, Vikings got a touchdown, and then the other time we held them to a field goal. right? So one of those times you got that three or nothing. So good job for the defense on that drive. Also, the other part of it is the red zone, right? You never want to kick field goals in the red zone. You never want to kick field goals in the red zone. And I believe we made Minnesota kick 3 field goals in the red zone, which, hey, you hold a team to 50%, you should win that game. Now, that being said, let's look at it on the other side. Again, we get 2 turnovers, and I believe off of those 2 turnovers, we got I know we got the 1 field goal because obviously that was when we had the ball down by the 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that on another, maybe there was a field goal as well. So, you don't get the job done when you get short field. I believe that was when we went 4 plays for -6 yards.
Yep.
And because usually in this,
the 2 field goal drives, they lost yardage. They lost yardage on both field goal
exactly,
drives.
Which is incredible. So that being said, and I still yearn for the day when we get a turnover, especially from the middle of the field. First play, take a shot. That's the ultimate time to take a shot. I was just watching Cincinnati, San Francisco last week, and the Bengals got a turnover. The first play they took a shot to the end zone, got a touchdown. That is like the ideal time to throw a deep ball. Now, if you don't think you have a quarterback that can do it, well, that says something else there. We can get into that too later. But to your point about the run game, one, yes, has the offensive line as a whole kind of regressed this year. Yeah, I'd say so. Again, Bergeron's going to take his lumps. He's a rookie. It's going to happen. But I think what's been the most shocking thing is, you remember how unstoppable it felt at times when we ran to the right last year?
Yeah.
It just felt like you could tell people, hey, we're going to line up. We're running right behind McGarry. We're running right behind Lindstrom. There's nothing you can do about it. And that hasn't happened much this year. I saw some of it, like that last drive. We ran an outside zone, I believe, with Tyler Algier, and it was a pretty big run. I was like, that feels like last year when everyone knew we were running the ball because of what we had on the outside. Like, you knew we had no choice. And so, again, the thing for me, though, is just like I said, there's just, for all this talk that I've seen clips and I've seen tape of it, of this genius run design play caller, right, in terms of Arthur Smith. That's where a lot of people have talked about. It's like, he is so great at creating these unique run schemes. Looks really vanilla right now to me.
Yeah.
Now, again, I don't know why that is. Is it because of a young quarterback, young offensive lineman with Bergeron in there? I don't know what it is, but it's just, like I said, based off the personnel groupings and who's out there, it's so obvious as to what they're running, to where, yes, you have regression from the offensive line as a whole, but you're also not helping them out at all, trying to design up and scheme up what is coming. And I think that's one of the things that's been so frustrating. And, it's not surprising in that regard that because of that, the run game has not been what it could be or should be. And so now the question is, like, how do you change that? Because I don't know right now. It's just shocking to me how vanilla some of these run schemes look.
Yeah, it's so puzzling, like, watching they don't get any push. It's like Bijan's getting hit in the backfield like every other carry. And like, he's still somehow averaging 4.6 yards per carry despite taking losses, and it's like, you see that, and like, this is nothing against Tyler Algier. I think Tyler Algier is a perfectly good running back. I think he's an ideal, like, number 2 running back that can carry the load if you need to. I think he's a great closer. He has his uses. I think he's a reliable pass blocker. He's a reliable pass catcher. He's not really a plus. Like, he's not super dynamic, but he's absolutely got good hands. Like, I don't really have any issue with Tyler Algier. This is not a slight at Tyler Algier. You spent the 8th overall pick on Bijan Robinson, and you're using him like a bit player in your offense. And like, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about, they're making him run option routes and do all this crazy shit. And now it's like, they don't even target him in the passing game anymore. That's not what I said. I said, just let him get some dump offs. let him run some wheels. Let him run some like running back routes, and not make him try to decipher an NFL pass offense as a rookie. And now it's like they've removed him from the passing offense entirely, and they're giving more carries to Tyler Algier. And Bijan has 1 red zone carry the entire season. Bijan has carried the ball 1 time in the red zone. Why is he here? Why did you spend this pick? Like, what are you doing? Like I
So
just
the frustrating part about it is you can say that for almost like the
right. I mean,
last
yeah,
three first picks that we had.
yeah.
You
We can
know,
just roll out the scroll like SpongeBob with all the grievances here. You know, it's just
yeah, but I mean, like again, it's we saw at least what I was excited about coming off of last year was in those 4 games looked like there was some rapport with Drake London
yeah.
and Desmond Ritter.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, I'm excited to see what that looks like this year. Obviously, he and Kyle Pitts, Ritter and Pitts would have to take some time since he didn't get to play with them last year. I get that. But we did see Kyle Pitts be an 1,000-yard receiver his first year when Matt Ryan was here. Maybe we didn't see the red zone targets and touchdowns that we wanted to, but at least, there was a usage of them. So now it's a question of for all 3 of those guys, it's what if you were going to do that, because again, we can go if you wanted to do the revisionist history game, we can obviously look at who was picked right around or right after we got those guys and look at this team and say, yep, that would have been an upgrade. Yeah, we needed someone there. Yeah, we needed someone here. Obviously, I know we talked about Jalen Carter, talked to you about Penei Sewell, Micah Parsons. The list goes on and on and on, right? And again, in terms of positions of need. So if you're going to get those guys, you use them, right? Again, I talked about Cincinnati. Remember when they got Jamar Chase, and I was like, aren't they really good on offense? So they need someone to protect
right.
Joe Burrow. But guess what? They use Jamar Chase. He's one of the best receivers in the league, so it makes sense. It works, right? So yeah, I think that's what's frustrating to me, because I agree with you about Tyler Algier. I mean, we saw last year he's a good back, 1,000-yard rusher in his rookie year. So it wasn't even a thing of, well, we need a dynamic running back, because it's like, no, we're fine with what we have, and you can use, get other guys. But if you are going to get them, and here are all the ways that everyone's talked about, the, positionless football and all of that, it's like, it's just not there. So that's when you ask the questions of, why do we do it?
Yeah.
If you draft someone like Jalen Carter, it's like, all right, cool. I don't have to worry about his use. You put him at the line of scrimmage and you let him wreak havoc from a 3 technique. Boom. All right, case closed, done, moving on. But yeah, with these guys where you got to get them the ball, you have to get them the ball. It's just that plain and simple.
Well, yeah, and you're absolutely right. And it's just like, there's this, I love football guys for fantasy. They've been doing their stuff over there for a long time. It's a great podcast, a lot of fun. And their one thing they always say is like, okay, this should be the case if we assume rational coaching. The assumption of rational coaching is a big buzzword over there. And Arthur Smith is the one, is a scapegoat. And it's not just for them, it's for everyone. Like, everyone in the NFL is coming after Arthur Smith now. And it's like, the warning signs were there in year 2 of Kyle Pitts, but it was easier to overlook because you've got Marcus Mariota, they're barely throwing the ball, and then Kyle Pitts got hurt. So it's like, okay, we saw year 1 of Kyle Pitts where like he wasn't targeted like insanely high, but he was targeted, I would say at least at the level of like a wide receiver 2. And under Matt Ryan, he had 300-yard games. He had, over 1,000 yards as a rookie tight end. It was a good season, so there was no concern. Year 2, it's also like we're on track. He's getting a healthy target share, but it's Marcus Mariota. It's kind of questionable, whatever. And then this year, it's like, we're going to use him less. Like, we're actually going to like use him even less. And like, these are Kyle Pitts targets this year. Week 1, 3 targets. Okay. Week 2, 5 targets. Not good enough. Week 3, 9 targets. Okay, that's not so bad. I like that. Only catches 5 of them, but that was the Lions
Turning
game
in
and
the right
that
direction.
and that week 4, 4 targets. Then in week 5 we get 11 targets. That is the most he's ever been targeted in a game. Kyle Pitts has only been targeted more than 10 times or 10 times twice in 3 years. We're gonna get to that. Then after that great game where Kyle Pitts has 7 catches for 87 yards, is like the engine of the offense, is crushing it. 6 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets. And this week, there was no Drake London to take targets away.
Right, exactly.
So it's like, okay, we need you even more. And he's just not targeted. And he's not even on the field. Like, man, like, Kyle Pitts is playing 50%, 57% of the snaps. Like, I mean, I think he's barely been on the field for, like, he hasn't even been on the field for 60% of the snaps, I think, on average this year. Maybe, like, just about that. So it's like...
And then... No, sorry, go ahead, yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, and for comparison's sake, I dove into this because we're all getting frustrated, right? you look at the guy you mentioned, right? Immediately taken after him in the draft, Jamar Chase. Now, there are contextual things there. He is a wide receiver.
Sure.
He's probably going to get targeted more as a wide receiver. And it's a better offense, and it has been throughout his entire career. So, like, all that being said, Jamar Chase has been targeted 10 or more times in a game, 18 times in roughly the same number of games as Kyle Pitts, where Kyle Pitts has been targeted 10 or more times twice. He's just not a featured player in this offense. And I'm sorry, I don't believe Kyle Pitts isn't good. I refuse to believe Kyle Pitts isn't good. I refuse. Like, what about what we saw yesterday when he made some great catches and was doing everything basically that he was asked? He was open. Like, and people are like, oh, well, maybe Kyle Pitts just isn't good. No, the coach isn't good, because you pass on it. And then, like, maybe Justin Fields wouldn't be the quarterback of the future. Maybe that would have gone poorly. It's not about who the quarterback was that was available. I mean, it is to some extent, but, like, you pass on a franchise quarterback to take Kyle Pitts. He should be your Jamar Chase. He should be like, okay, this is our, like, pillar of our passing offense. And to some extent he was in his first year, but since then it's like, oh yeah, he's out there. Jonnu Smith is getting more targets. And I love Jonnu Smith. You know me, secret weapon, Jonnu Smith. Like, I'm his biggest guy, but, like, I just don't understand it. Like, I can't fathom investing this much in a guy like Kyle Pitts and, like, making him less than a wide receiver 2 in your offense, like, and not even playing him more than 6. Can he not? Is he, like, that poorly conditioned or something? Like, I just don't believe it.
What makes it even worse, and you know, I get it. I'm not saying that you ever want to get in a situation where 8's on the field, it's gonna be a pass play. 8's off the field to run. I'm not saying that you do that, but what makes this even more frustrating is, again, when we look at the red zone, I talked about, you know, the Falcons. I think were 1 for 2. 1 of 2 in the red zone, which, again, only 2 red zone trips in a game is ridiculous. That jet sweep play for Jonnu Smith, like, one, obviously, why? But also, like, you can tell me, oh, we just try to get to the edge. There are so many other ways you can get to the edge than having to get the ball to Jonnu Smith. I mean, for a while, I was questioning myself. I was like, what relationship is stronger? Arthur Smith and Jonnu Smith, or Lincoln Riley with Alex French? Well, I got my answer because one got fired yesterday. But who was blocking at your point of attack on that play? It's, you know, Tucker Fisk, shout out Stanford, who for the most has been a practice squad guy. He's playing fullback because Keith Smith is out. And it's Kyle Pitts trying to block Daniil Hunter, who, again, obviously we all wanted him for what he does in the pass game. He's also a pretty solid run defender as well. That's just not a good matchup. But then also, I mean, even when we saw last week, who was the guy who's leading the blocking for Jonnu Smith while he's trying to pass to Michael Pruitt? It's Kyle. You know, it's just one of those things where that's what makes it, even just outside the targets, what makes it even more frustrating is how he's being used or how he's using him in the run game. You know, like that, I think that's what just sets it off even more. You know, again, it's like I said yesterday, the biggest thing about coaching is you do what you can to put your players in the best position possible to succeed. Having Kyle Pitts trying to block Daniil Hunter as your main guy up front is not doing that, because it happened again on the Tyler Algier 3rd down run. Whereas, you know, the fact that, and I get it, he's one of, if not the best tight ends of all time. The fact that I don't care, you could tell a whole defense, hey, Patrick Mahomes is throwing 87. They still find a way to get him the ball, right?
Constantly.
You know, we did it. I mean, when we had Tony G, it was, we're in the red zone. Guess who's probably going to get the ball? It's going to 88. You still couldn't stop it. Or if it was a big 3rd down, right?
Yeah. So
the thing for me is, and I'm not trying to put Kyle Pitts in that, you know, pedigree of tight ends or anything like that. My point being is, if you have a great player or a really good player, you can still find ways to get them the ball. And right now, for whatever reason, we are not finding a way to get Kyle Pitts the ball. And it's showing to me. Not even the fact of, like, his targets. JT O'Sullivan, when he's done his 2 Desmond Ridder breakdowns, you know, he gets so confused on certain clear routes because it's like, I think that's supposed to be a clear, but he's not really running that, you know, full on to take the top off the defense.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of those were Kyle Pitts, which for me, you know, if you want to talk about the maturity side of it, got you. Like, yeah, he should run hard, you know, no matter what. I understand that. At the same time, I'd understand his side too of being frustrated of this offense and how it's being run and how it's being used in it. because in the Detroit one, it was a miss by Ritter, but we had him. It was like a deep crosser, and he outran like the safety, and I believe it was another DB over there, and JT was just like, "That's a tight end running like that." Like, oh my goodness, like you couldn't believe it. That's what you have at your disposal. And remember, that was week 3, when it was still obvious of most of the game and most of that season up to that point, still not 100%, but still running like that. So, like I said, I don't get it. I really don't get it. And I know a lot of other people don't. And no, this isn't fantasy football talk. It's, if he's supposed to be one of the best players on your team, you should get one of the best players of all to help your team win.
Yeah. And the whole fantasy football thing is just a farce. Like this is not a fantasy football discussion. This is like, why are these players on your team if you're not going to use them? Like, if you just want to throw the ball to Jonnu Smith, then why bother drafting Kyle Pitts? If you just need a Jonnu Smith, you need sort of a yards after catch tight end, you can get that guy. You could get that guy for a 7th round pick, Jordan. You can get that guy for a 7th round pick and $9 million. But that's how much it costs to get Jonnu Smith. We spent a 4th overall on Kyle Pitts, and we can't get him the ball. And I'm sorry, I don't think it's all on the quarterbacks either. It's not.
Well, I'm glad we got to prove that to be true this week. The thing for me is just, again, to continue on with your point. And maybe Arthur Smith doesn't realize this, but to an extent, fantasy football and real football are pretty correlated, right? Because who do you draft in fantasy football? Guys that you think are really good, guys you think they're going to get the ball, they're going to have success. In real football, what do you want to do? Guys, you want to have guys on your team you think are really good. You want to get them the ball. You think that they can bring you success. So there is that somewhat similarity. And I'm not saying that reporters are asking them questions for fantasy, because we know they aren't. But again, that is the somewhat marriage between the two. Fantasy owners, they draft guys who they think are really good and can put up numbers. You want to see guys on your team in real football have the ball in their hands that can be really good and help you put up points. And so that's why I know you and so many others are talking about it now. Just that condescending nature of bringing up fantasy football. I know if you looked at the press conference this week, there wasn't any mention of that. I think there was a little self-realization that happened during that game in the Benz, but that should have never come up in the first place.
Yeah,
is more so what I'm saying.
It's ridiculous that we're even having this conversation, because it should go without saying that you should be throwing as much as you can at Kyle Pitts. I think it's inexcusable that he doesn't. It's like he's turned him into a deep threat and slant guy, and that's it. It's like, okay, you're running deep, Kyle, or you're catching this slant, and that's it. Or this intermediate crosser, or that's it. There's no trust for him to run any other routes. You're not trying. Where's the creativity to get? He's just playing in the slot. He's a big slot for you. That's it. That's all you have for him is play big slot. You could get a big slot receiver. You don't have to spend the 4th overall pick if that's what you want. It's just before it was there were a couple things where you could point to and be like, well, all these factors are here. That's maybe why he's not getting targeted as much, or that's maybe why he's not having the success. He's been injured. They've got bad quarterbacks. They're not throwing the ball a lot. This year they're throwing the ball. They're throwing the damn ball this year, and they're still not throwing it to Kyle Pitts. And that to me is one of the biggest indictments of Arthur Smith's coaching is not only are they not throwing it to him, but they're not scheming it to him. You get the ball to your playmakers. So this offense, this should be Drake London, 7 to 10 targets, Kyle Pitts, 7 to 10 targets, Bijan, 3 to 5 targets and a bunch of carries. And instead it's the peanut gallery of guys. And that's not bad. Occasionally you need your other guys to step up. I think Kadarrell Hodge has shown he's got something.
Yes.
I think that the loss of Matt Collins in this game was actually huge, and we haven't talked about that. But when he went out, they had no more physical possession receiver that, and that's a core player on. Now you would think maybe that should be Kyle Pitts now. Maybe make Kyle Pitts your physical possession receiver, because we know he can do it. They didn't do that, obviously. But they want to play this game where they've got their big physical guy on one side and they've got a speedier guy on the other, and then they've got apparently Kyle Pitts in the slot. And then Jonnu Smith apparently is going to be the engine of the offense. But like it's like we've gotten so obsessed with having all these like personnel packages and like, oh, we this all needs to look the same and all this, that we've like forgotten to actually make an offense. It's like it's just a bunch of personnel packages with random route combinations and like, well, we're going to create mismatches with this personnel, but like we've forgotten that like, oh, the more important thing is to actually just have an effective offense. Like it's all well and good to talk about positionless football, but like it's like they've put a question mark over their position and now they're just randomly throwing guys on the field. It's like, that's not positionless football. That's just nonsensical football. That's like, I don't know what I'm doing football.
And that's what's frustrating, because the whole point of positionless football is you have no idea what an offense is going to line up in, and that gives you your mismatches, right? Like with this team, like I said, if you want to line up in 12 personnel, all right, cool. That means I got one running back, whoever it's going to be, Tyler, Cordero, which again, I still don't know exactly what the joker position is supposed to be. The joke is more so of that, we made it this big deal that it's on the depth chart.
Complete joke.
But that being said, is you got, so you can have Bijan out there or Tyler, two tight ends. So we got Jonnu, we got Kyle Pitts. I don't know if Kyle's going to be in line. Is he going to be lined up outside as an X? Is he going to be split in the slot? The reason why that's so frustrating and stressful is, hey, if you have two inline tight ends, that's usually a obvious run formation. So if you're a defense, you're thinking, all right, I need to have, maybe I want to have my base defense out there or whatever. But if he's out in the slot, now who knows? If you have a man defense, you have a linebacker that's going to be trying to guard Kyle Pitts out in space. That's got to be a win. Like that's how it's supposed to look, right? To create those mismatches. But right now, like I said, it just doesn't look like that at all.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, so far this year, we've seen, Kyle Pitts has played the slot almost entirely or out wide.
Yeah.
So it's like he's played as many snaps out wide as he has in line, which that's not surprising. But then he's like doubled up those in the slot. And it's like, I don't know that having him be a slot receiver is like really what like the best way to utilize him. And like, I think he can play the slot, but I'm starting to wonder if and Caleb McGarry like hinted at this in a way several weeks ago. I don't know if you remember his press conference where he was like, oh, well, these plays are so complicated. Like if one thing goes wrong, it all falls apart. And it's like, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. Like, and like, if you're having Kyle Pitts have to learn to play three spots on the line where he's got to learn how to play in line, got to play slot, and got to play out wide at wide receiver, maybe you're not letting these guys actually get good at anything. Like they can just line up everywhere, but they're not learning how to actually do anything at a high level. Then that was the criticism with Bijan too. It's like, oh, we're going to make him play everywhere and run option routes when he should be learning how to play running back. Like,
well, and that's again, to that extent, that's why I was trying to talk about, those option and choice routes for Bijan, right? And I mean, even to that extent, it's so interesting. And I'm glad you brought back up that Caleb McGarry comment, because my question then is, well, was it not like that last year? Because if it wasn't, the question then becomes what or why now is it this year that it's become that complicated and that complex, especially when the majority of your offense is still pretty young, right? It's a young quarterback. If you have Ritter out there, it's a young running back, two young running backs, young tight end, young receiver. So if that's the case and it just got more complex from last year to this year, why did that happen? And that being said, it's like even the things that shouldn't be complex, the simple things, they don't do, right? Like I know a lot of people get frustrated. They got frustrated a few weeks ago with Bijan when he was lined out wide. Like, Bijan, turn your head around faster. He's running a route. Like, also the blitz wasn't coming from the guy that he was lined up on. He's not the hot read there. Whoever the blitz is coming from, right? It's one of those things of, if the defense gives you space, you take that space, right? So if they're running a slot blitz, whoever the slot is, that's got to be your hot. But that guy's also not turning his head around, right? That's one of the simpler things that should be understood, but the Falcons struggle with that. Which, again, if you're making things so complex and complicated, well, you better make sure that you got the simple things down first. Yeah,
exactly. And it's like, I feel like they're like, oh, we're going to make the final form of this offense. We're going to have all these positionless players. And it's too complicated. Like, it's too much for, Like, Arthur Smith has been alluding that people are running the wrong routes and they're not running the routes correctly and all this. It's like, maybe because you have them running too many things. Like, you have maybe the playbook's too long. Maybe it's too complex. I don't know. And like, nobody ever wants to talk about that because it's like, oh, are you saying the players are dumb? No, but like, there's a reasonable expectation for an offense, and offenses can be too complicated. That is a thing. There's not really any reason. There's not really any reason to have something be overly complicated. In fact, the simpler the better, because the simpler it is, the fewer things can go wrong. And what are we seeing this Falcons offense do more than anything? Little things go wrong that derail drives.
Yes,
constantly. And it's like that Lindstrom or that McGarry quote is really resonating with me, because it's like, wow, this offense actually feels like exactly what he said. Everything is so complicated that if one little thing goes wrong, it all falls apart. And it's been falling apart a lot, Jordan. It's been falling apart a lot.
And I'll tell you this much too: we get one more false start at home, I'm going to scream. I'm legit gonna I'm going to get evicted from my apartment. I'm going to scream so loud.
Noise ordinance. Yeah.
There's no excuse to have a false start in your own stadium. Absolutely none. And the fact that we got one again, so this is going back to the jet sweep drive. You started that drive off at the 1 yard line. The first thing you do is get a false start.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
And then it was the ultimate iron. Like the next play, they do that actually good screen to Jonnu Smith, which maybe that's the Falcons' best play, where he takes it all the way back to the one, which was equally hilarious. But like, yeah.
I know.
And then they promptly do nothing. It's like, oh, well, you got over the turnover. Okay, you got over the penalty. Okay, great. And then they promptly do nothing after that, of course. But
and again, it's just so like what I'm upset about. And I've talked about this a lot. If you've checked out the Falcon Fate podcast, in terms of there's been a couple of games where I've wanted the Falcons I wanted it to be an identity game. And what I meant by that is, okay, what is our identity supposed to be? A team that is a smash mouth team, run the ball, but we also have some good players on the outside that we can hurt you with too. You're telling me you have 3 plays inside, 3 plays at the 2, right? And you can't run the ball there to get that. Like, the thing for me is that, again, that's one of those situations where identity moment. And that's what I think frustrates me even more. Not even just the fact that it was a bad play, not the fact that it was a poor design play with your 2 point of attack blockers. It's the fact of you just told everyone and you just let your offensive line know that's not who we are anymore, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, everyone knows. So, for example, if I looked at the Eagles have the ball at or inside 1 yard to go. What are they doing? Everybody knows it, and they're saying. Yeah, like everyone knows, and they're telling you, hey, stop it if you can. We know you can't, because that's who we are. We're going to be the physical, the stronger team. You can't stop it. If you do something like that at the 1, though, you deflate your offense, and also you boost up the defense, because that is admitting, and I'm telling you this, and I've seen it from the side of, we've been on defense, and teams did that to us back in the Stanford days, right, where you try to do something more gimmicky or whatever. But also I've seen it from, our offense where they don't convert, and the play that they use to convert is not what they want to do, yada, yada, things like that. It's deflating.
Yeah.
And, yeah, like I said, I get it. Chris Lindstrom, I think he wants to be a bully. Bergeron, yes. I mean, we saw how he finishes blocks when he's on. He wants to be a bully. Drew is, again, I'm not going to say he's a bully, but I mean, you tell me 1 yard to go, you can't get behind him or Jake or Caleb McGarry, who you brought back because of his run blocking. You're telling me you can't trust them to say, hey, I'm handing this ball off, go get a yard.
Right.
So it goes back to, again, what is our identity? What is the identity of this team on offense? What's the philosophy, the base philosophy that we're supposed to have? Because if you look around, I don't think anybody truly knows what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, the pass attempts have been going up every week. Like, let me pull it up. But like, I mean, it's been a very bizarre sort of season for the Falcons, who just have, I mean, it's just been a weird year overall. I mean, I think we can all see that, but I mean, you mentioned it. Like, what is the identity of this team? I thought this was a team that was going to pass the ball a little bit more, but still be this smash mouth team. They were going to be close to the league lead in carries and maybe get closer to 50-50 this year instead of actually running more run plays than pass plays. But like, now, man, it's just so tough to watch to watch this team at this stage, because it's, I mean, you look at that last drive where they get the ball and they have that dominant rushing drive.
Like, yeah, the last one, the touchdown drive, yeah.
And it's like, oh wow, they actually like dominated them up front, and they didn't do that the entire game up to that point. And it's just like you're telling me, like, I think that mindset changes things for the offensive line. They can get into a rhythm. Absolutely. Running the ball. They're like, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to go out there and crush these guys. Like, we saw them do this time and time again last year, where they were just this awesome run blocking team. It didn't even seem to matter that teams knew they were going to run the ball. And it's like they had a couple of like bad games in weeks 3 and 4, and it's like, okay, well, now we have to be a passing team because the teams are shutting down the run. So now we have to be a passing team. And instead of fixing the issues with the run game and tweaking things, they're like, nope, we're going to start throwing the ball a lot. And actually, we're not going to run the ball. And ever since they've just been very middling running the football. And you have to wonder if, like you said, is this a mental thing where it's like, oh, well, the coaching staff no longer has faith in this offensive line to run the ball. So have they lost faith in themselves? You know, it has the mental state of the team changed to where, like, oh, we no longer feel like we're this hard-nosed rushing team. You know, the coaching staff no longer trusts us. And like, they're getting pushed around up front in some of these games in ways they never would have been before. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it all matters. I'm sure it all plays into it. But like, at this point, we're not. Arthur Smith, the thing he could always hang his hat on, even if you hated his passing concepts, which understandable, he was scheming up the run. Like, the run game was working great. They were finding ways to run the ball, even with teams prepared for it entirely last year. Pretty much nonstop, they were a great rushing attack. This year, with a better passing game, better quarterback play, better weapons, better running backs, they're not running the ball well. And you look at these red zone play calls, and it's like they don't trust anyone. It's like, we're gonna have to. What did your teacher always say? You know, like, don't put fluff in your essay. It's like, if you got a bunch of fluff in your essay, that means you don't know what the hell you're talking about. This offense is all fluff in the red zone. It's all fluff. It's like, so we don't have anything real. We can't just run a counter at the 1. Like, we can't just like run a couple of short crossers in the end zone. Like, the offense looks so bizarre the second they get down inside the 10. And it's like, it just feels like they don't trust anyone to actually make a play, that they have to do all this misdirection to even have a shot to score.
I've seen, I think, one jump ball fade type of play to Drake London. Desmond Ridder threw it a little too hard, right? It had a little bit more touch on it. And then after that, I was like, okay, well, that didn't work. We're not doing it.
Well, we're done with that. Yep.
But, you know, I know I keep going back to this game and this drive because it really was beautiful. So, again, the Cleveland Browns game last year, Falcons won 23-20 at home. Again, Tyler Algier in that game, 10 carries, 84 yards, right? Caleb Huntley, 10 for 56 and a touchdown. Cordero, 9 for 38 and a touchdown. Marcus he was 7 of 19 for 139 yards, 1 interception. The reason why I bring that up is because after that interception is when, like, the most beautiful drive in all of football I have ever seen happen. It was, I'm just telling you, it's 10 plays. Here's what they did, right? So starting off, 1st and 10, Caleb Huntley for 6 yards. Caleb Huntley again for 5. Huntley for 14. Huntley for 9. Huntley for 4. Algier for 7. Algier for 14. Huntley for 6. Huntley for 5. And then Huntley for 5 as a touchdown. That is the drive right after an interception where you're saying, all right, I can't trust my quarterback to put this in the air right now. Hey, defense, this is what we're going to do. Good luck stopping it. And again, to your point, now you have Bijan Robinson in there as well, where you should have 3 guys that you can, you know, continue to switch, take turns with, wear defense down. And like you said, good luck. I mean, good luck trying to tackle any of the 3 running backs later in the game. Because they're all, I get, you know, Bijan is great in space. He can be a physical, hard to bring down guy too. Like, he's still a pretty big back. And again, like I said, that's why it's just frustrating to watch this team this year. You could do stuff like that last year. Where is that physicality in that attack this year? Because I'm telling you, the offensive lineman's dream would be have a drive like that.
Yeah.
that is their dream. And the fact that you had success doing it too, oh my goodness. Like, yeah, they are the momentum that they can take from that. It just goes, that doesn't even go just for the end of the game. That goes for weeks on.
Yeah.
At the same time, you have the ball at the 1 and you only try to do like one tradition. You only have one traditional run play in that sequence. And then because you go backwards on 3rd down, you don't even try to go for it on 4th with a what is it? I think at that point was that was Dobbs. So at that point, just a guy that just got there for 5 days. That, like I said, that's just the plating.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just it's a bizarre situation, but I think all signs point to the coaching now, because it's like, well, we've got the pieces you said you needed. We've invested in the offensive line. We have the 2 quarterbacks you wanted, and while you insisted that we didn't need to go and get anyone else at quarterback. And it's not, and it's worse, yeah. And it's worse. So like, I don't know where else you point the finger. I think we know where to point the finger. So it's time to figure it out. But yeah, it's been so frustrating watching Bijan. Like, he doesn't even have a chance on a lot of these runs.
No.
And
Tyler doesn't either.
Yeah. It's like, how many losses did they take yesterday running the football? It's like, and it seems like they've completely taken the run off the books on 3rd down. Like, when's the last time we had a 3rd and 4th or shorter and actually ran the ball? I feel like they were doing that all the time in 2022 and converting.
Well, that's the other part of it too, is how many times are you getting those 3rd and shorts, period? Like,
right.
How many times do you start off on offense and you get a penalty to start off the drive, or there's a negative play, whether it's a sack, TFL early on, and that just throws you all off schedule. So you're not getting a lot of those 3rd and shorts anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So that's part of it. But it's like, even when they get there, they run empty. It seems like they run empty all the time on 3rd and 4th or less. It's like, why?
No, don't.
It's just why? Like,
I could go on a 20-minute
Wasn't this the entire point? Wasn't this the entire point of all these running backs and making this run game great, is to threaten the run and misdirect the opponent, and then you go empty on 3rd down? It's like,
and the thing for me too that I'd like to see more, and this is more so a Ritter thing. I mean, Heineke can run, but Ritter's a better runner in my opinion. If you're gonna go empty, can I see a draw, please? Like, if they're gonna empty the box, can I just see a draw?
Yeah.
Like again, because right now I just don't think that with the way we scheme up our passing game, and again, does not. We should start making a list of, here are all the notable people that have something to say about this offense and spacing and yada, 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 right? Because again, like I said, JT O'Sullivan's talked about it. Kurt Warner's talked about it. Kurt Benkert has talked about it. And again, those are NFL quarterback guys, right? So at this point, it's just, again, let's not try to reinvent the wheel here.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you don't need to get complicated with it. Like,
no,
it's like we decided that we needed to dazzle everyone with all these crazy formations and stuff, when it's like, if you need to do that, maybe that means you just aren't good. Like, you look at teams like Andy Reid and the Chiefs, like, it seems like half the time people are complaining when they run their crazy plays, because it's like, well, wouldn't it be better to just have Travis Kelce like run an intermediate crosser and just stop in the zone and have, Mahomes hit him, because that just works all the time? Like, why do we need to do this, like, spin around in a circle and then do a play and then get sacked? Like,
and even they have their flaws too. I mean,
yeah,
they almost lost because of this. Sunday morning, they don't run the ball in 3rd and short.
Yeah,
it's almost like they're allergic to it for whatever reason, and especially when you have someone that runs as hard as Pacheco does, and that's a good offensive line. Obviously, I know that was their problem in the Super Bowl against Tampa, but that's a good line now. And so I don't understand why they don't run on 3rd and short at times. And I'm saying this for as much of a genius as Andy Reid is, that is alarming to me, right? And so, again, just pivoting back to the Falcons with that, it's getting into these, obvious run situations, and for whatever reason, whether it's your running back, your offensive line, you not trusting them to get that yard here or there, is that's pretty telling and alarming, especially based off of what you're supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, like, this is all very concerning stuff. And look, I I think we've both kind of run out of patience for Arthur Smith now. This was kind of his.
Oh,
year
mine's been gone.
I know your patience is gone. I've people might not believe it, but I've been pretty patient, and I was super excited when he got hired because all the things he was saying, I think, made perfect sense. We want to have this hard-nosed physical football team. Yeah. That's what the Falcons have been missing for years. Okay, love it. They were great in the red zone. They were great on third down. They were super efficient passing the ball in Arthur Smith's 2 years as coordinator in Tennessee. Not one of those things sounds bad to me. All those things were great. The play designs were creative. They weren't overly complex. They were relatively simple, but they executed at a high level. Ryan Tannehill was playing well, but it was clear that he didn't need this elite quarterback to make that offense work. That was also a nice thing. And they were consistently good.
Lined up behind you.
Right. And they were consistently good running the ball. So it's like, okay, he's talking about we're going to meld the scheme to our players. We're going to do all this creative stuff. It's going to be positionless football. And it's like, it just feels disingenuous because they haven't really melded the scheme to their players at all. In fact, they've just tried to stuff all these players that they pursued into this specific system without really changing anything. Like, this offense looks exactly like Tennessee's offense. There hasn't been any adjustment whatsoever. So, like, and I think it's easy for coaches to say, like, oh, yeah, we're going to change the scheme for our players. And, like, they haven't done it. It's not like it's just a Falcons thing, but, like, coaches have big egos. And that's the other thing with Arthur Smith. Is, like, we talked about on the postgame show, like, he's become the most unlikable figure in the NFL at this point because of how he treats the media and the fantasy community and all these people. And it's like, this is all starting to stack up to be very problematic, Jordan.
Oh, the only saving grace right now for him so far has been he's on Pat McAfee every week. I mean, and the thing with this too, I thought this was poetic justice, right? I believe it was Kelly Price, and she works for Fox 5, does an awesome job, with everything with the Falcons and covering them. I think she put this out before the game, but I saw it during the game. So Liam, Arthur's son, he dressed up as his dad for Halloween. And so, he's got like a little fake mustache, the headset on, call sheet. And, he's like counting down a play clock, and he's trying to get ready to call in his play. And he says, "Give it to Bijan." And oh my goodness, it couldn't have been worse timing because everyone saw it and it's just like, really? Liam understands this? Like, what's it was just so bad because I think I saw it after that the goal line when we got the ball at the 1. And I was just like, oh man, this is not good. It was just like how poorly the timing was when Desmond Ritter's DoorDash commercial came out. It was kind of like one of those things of like, hey, I'm happy for you. You're getting the bag. You're getting some money with the ad deal. But, oh, my goodness, this could not be worse timing
not be any
to be out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. It's brutal timing with that. But, yeah, I mean, we need to see a hell of a lot more. And we don't have a lot more time to see it this year. And
you've got 1 week in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it. Yeah.
Like, seriously. And I'm not saying that to say – to being paid because I get it. You still have 8 games left. I think 7-8 games left this year. But the way it would look, and again, I'm telling y'all right now, I get it. Arizona has 1 win. They are a better team than that 1 win shows. I'm just telling you. But if you cannot go out and get that win against Arizona, and we're on this losing streak going into the bye week, there are going to be a lot of questions around here for 2 weeks. There's already questions going around now, whether it's in the fan base, just the national, analysts and pundits of football. There are a lot of questions going on with this team right now. So you don't get this win. And I think also to an extent, if that win doesn't look a certain way, right? Like, you can't be a 13-10 struggle. I think it's got to be like a 10+ point win for some of the rumblings to die down a bit. So if it doesn't look a certain way and you don't get this win, this is going to be problematic.
Yeah. And like, I to start the season, I know that Arthur Smith's seat was cold. It was not at all hot like that, and probably shouldn't have been, mm-hmm. Right? There wasn't really any reason for it to be. And I know some people were really more anti-Arthur Smith, and maybe those people will be shown to be right. At this point, it's certainly looking more like that. But things change fast in the NFL. What did Arthur Blank say? This is year 3 of a 3-year plan. He didn't say 4-year plan. He said 3-year plan. And in year 3 of the 3-year plan, the Falcons are 4-5. In year 1 of the 3-year plan, they were 4-5. In year 2 of the 3-year plan, they were 4-5. This is the same ass team. They have not made progress. They've gotten worse from last year. Last year's schedule was a lot harder, and that team had a third of their cap space eaten up by bad contracts. So you've played an easier schedule with a better roster, and you're 4-5 again, and looking worse in my opinion, except on the defense. Defense looks better. And
in some situations, the easy schedule has gotten easier.
Yeah.
If you think about some of the misses again, the last 3 weeks, you went against teams that were sitting on G, waiting for O to just blow things up and start a rebuild. Right? I mean, it started again. You think about the Commanders. They even said they put it. I mean, and again, they put the rumor out there because they wanted to see they could get a better offer for Montez Sweat than our third. And congrats, they got one from Chicago. But they told you, hey, we got to see how the game looks this week. Otherwise, we'll make the trade, which meant obviously we kind of want to lose so we can get the contracts out, start all over. Tennessee, before you play them, Kevin Byard, they're great safety. They trade him to Philly, and the reason why they do it is so they can clear up cap space for next year, and they start a rookie quarterback. And then going into this week, again, Ezra Cleveland, who's a really good young guard, the Vikings traded him right before the deadline to Jacksonville. It's Jaron Hall's going to start. Justin Jefferson's out. Obviously, we know Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson are on their last year of their deals. So one's on IR, the other one's out for the year, their mindset is starting to change a bit of what the season's supposed to be and what they want to do. Now, you lost to all 3 of those teams, Yeah. And like I said, that got easier. Obviously, we don't have to see, probably not going to see Aaron Rodgers later in the year. There's just certain things like that where an easy schedule before the year has gotten easier and you haven't taken advantage of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's comically easy, like the quarterbacks that they've played. Like, and
yes,
to their credit, they have 2 impressive wins. I think that win over Houston is going to look good.
That's a good win. Yeah.
I think that win over the Bucs was actually a pretty solid win.
Road division win. Absolutely.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm not impressed with you beating the Panthers. I'm not impressed with you beating the Packers, who look like a dumpster fire. I'm not impressed with you beating any of these other teams. Like, and you lost to all these bad teams. You lost to. The Commanders decided to tank after they kicked your ass. Like, and the Titans, like, were basically low key tanking with Will Levis and trading players away, and they came in and whooped you. And then the Vikings, on their third quarterback, who hadn't even played, came in and whooped you at home. So
he didn't even practice.
Yeah,
he hadn't practiced.
To be completely fair to Josh Dobbs, that was like a heroic, maybe once in a lifetime performance. Incredible. So
Absolutely.
he deserves a lot of credit for that, and that's part of the reason I'm going a little bit easier on the defense, because like the man had like a heroic, maybe once in a lifetime sort of performance. And like sometimes your opponent just plays really well. That is a thing. There is another team on the field, and sometimes they just outplay you. And to Josh Dobbs' credit, I mean, he absolutely crushed it. I don't think he could have played a better game if he tried. So props to Josh Dobbs. But like, the Falcons should have won that game by double digits. Like, I mean,
and the thing is, like, to your point, right? So the Vikings put up 31 points. The way that game could look different, like, yes, the defense shouldn't allow 31 points. I get that. But what you do on offense dictates what happens on defense. So, again, some of those threes turn into sixes, right? Like, what Minnesota then has to do is a little bit different. Maybe they don't feel like they're in a game going into halftime, which, by the way, I think I saw a stat, 11 points is actually the most we've scored in the first half all year.
That's correct.
Which is, Oh, my gosh. It's just for context, it's what, 123, I think, right now over here. Or is it? Yeah, 123 over here on the West Coast on a Monday, and just having that, I need a drink already. But
make it a double, yeah.
Seriously. But the point being is, you don't think that you get some touchdowns instead of some of those field goals that the Vikings before that are saying, you know what, we got a guy that just got here 5 days ago. Let's not try to force things here, and let's just go to half, right? Maybe that's how that looks. So then they only have 3, and we have, who knows, 17, 20, and that's what it looks like at halftime. So again, yes, still on the defense to get stops, but as we've talked about all year long, the offense has to do. It's not complimentary football right now in Atlanta. And if you were going to tell me that the reason why it was going to be because the defense is so far ahead of what the offense is, I would not have believed you before the year started. But that's why it hasn't been complimentary.
Yeah.
Now the situation, unfortunately, was pretty complimentary on Sunday. It's just both were not good. You know,
both failed simultaneously.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, exactly. So again, that's just where, like I said, you know, the defense obviously helps the offense out a lot. The turnovers, getting some 3 and outs, you bail them out when they force field goals, when the offense turns the ball over. Now you got to see that get rewarded more often.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the keys to the game are on the offensive side. Like, yeah, the defense didn't play their best game, but like the defenses had to carry the load every single week. The offense coming away with negative yards on the 2 turnovers the defense caused in scoring position on both of those and getting just field goals. That was the turning point.
Yeah.
And then the offense turning it over on back-to-back drives on the first play of said drives, throwing the defense back out there. And that led to 11 points for the Vikings directly. So
yeah,
like,
and
it's like, I don't even blame the defense. It's like you just got thrown back out there like on 4 consecutive drives essentially because your offense shit the bed twice. So like when you win up 21-13, you immediately threw the game back to your opponent with those mistakes. So like, I mean, I'm sorry, like Arthur Smith, I blame you.
and look, everybody and everyone in Atlanta knows because we lived through it. You continuously put your defense back on the field very quickly. Bad things can happen. Right?
Even good defense.
I think we all know exactly what game I'm talking about when I say that. I don't need to name it.
That's
bad
enough.
Things
yeah,
can
we
happen
can
when
there.
you put exactly. Bad things can happen when you continuously rush your defense back out on the field.
Yeah, we're down bad enough, Jordan, without evoking the game that shall not be.
Like I said, I was going to say the name of it. I just wanted to leave it there. I felt like the description could give it away enough.
I think we can put the pieces together here. But,
yeah,
we definitely have a lot more to cover on this, and hopefully we can get a little more positivity this week. We'll see. I'm not holding my breath. This could be a very dark bye week for many reasons, so we'll see.
Oh man.
You know, I was hoping to hold off on the draft takes until December, but even that seems like maybe that was too aggressive. So, Jordan, good show. I think we covered a lot of ground. We got more to cover, but we'll save some of it for hopefully brighter days or darker days, whatever. But guys, appreciate everyone hanging out with us on this. I think this is a new record for the longest trench talk, so we clearly got a lot of feelings about this one. But guys, thanks to our sponsor today, betonline.ag. Thanks to my co-host Jordan Watkins at Big75Fella. Jordan, tell the people where they can find the Falcons Fade podcast and anything else you're working on.
Yeah, it's wherever you get your podcast from. You know, we're usually on Spotify. I know that's where I always listen to mine. Again, we were on, I think it's WDJY in the Atlanta area from 3 to 4 on Mondays doing a recap show. And so those are main places you can find me. Like I said, again, shout out Morris Brown College, kind of wearing this, just, you know, shout out HBCUs in Atlanta. Also, you know, my mom went there, my grandma went there. We actually just lost my grandma about a week ago. So kind of wearing this too, just in her honor, showing love for her as well. And that's that.
Yeah. Well, appreciate all that. Definitely check that out, and shout out to the college as well. I like the purple too. I'm glad you clarified that it wasn't for the Vikings.
I had to make sure.
Closet Vikings fan over here. Yeah. But
no.
Yes. Thanks to Jordan once again for his contributions today. Great show, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe on YouTube if you're joining us there. If you listen to the podcast, give us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Folks, I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. We'll see you again on Wednesday night for the next episode of Falcoholic Live, the last pre-bye show we got before the game and all the game preview stuff gets started. So I'm sure we'll have some reasonable and very not hot takes on that show. But guys, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Dirty Birds and Brews. Until then, have a great day, folks. See ya.